The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
The Red Apple Media Podcast Network presents This is Protecting America. Now, here's Emmy-winning journalist Rita Cosby.
And welcome to another edition of Protecting America. I'm Rita Cosby. The Trump administration is cracking down on states and cities that are not cooperating with federal efforts to arrest and deport illegal criminal migrants. This comes as illegal border crossings are plummeting to historic levels. And that is thanks to President Trump's immediately securing our homeland. And joining us now to discuss this and so much more is Art Del Cueto. He is the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council. Art, really great to have you here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you.
Are these sanctuary cities and states doing enough?
Look, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, everything that these individuals are doing, I believe, are against. They're traitors to the country. Let's be honest. What they do is they create a magnet for criminal behavior. They create a magnet for criminals to come to their cities and their states. But here's some of the problem. There's cities out there that act as sanctuary cities, but they haven't declared themselves as sanctuary cities. And that's where some of the even major problem is, because they've talked to it. And when I mean some of these mayors, they've spoken to the leadership within law enforcement, and they've told them, hey, do not help, do not assist, do not comply with, any immigration issue.
It is amazing that, and there's the big difference, obviously, and you understand this all too well, between saying I'm not going to help and actually thwarting efforts. Where does it draw the line?
Right. So that's the problem, Rita. It doesn't draw the line with these individuals. They're one and the same. One is just bold enough to tell you, I'm not going to do it. I'm a sanctuary city. But the other one is just as bad. They're like kind of the wolf in sheep's clothing, because they say, oh, everything's okay. And I'll take, for instance, Arizona. There's places where they have said, we're just going to go back to working the way we worked under 1070. 1070 was that very controversial immigration law in Arizona. And when you hear somebody say, we're going to go back to what we were doing during 1070, it gives you the idea that they're going to go back to arresting people. But then you look closely at what they were doing during 1070, and you realize they weren't enforcing immigration law. So it's kind of a trick with words. They make you believe that they're going to help, but they're really just not going to help. They're no different than the ones that are claiming to be sanctuary cities.
There was the hearing recently on Capitol Hill with the 4 mayors, and it was an astounding moment, Art, where Michelle Wu, who is the mayor of Boston, just openly said, shame on Tom Homan. I mean, she went on the offense. What's your reaction when you see that?
I saw several of those interviews that were done with 4 of those individuals, and I think it's just, honestly, I think it's disgusting. It's a slap in the face, not just towards law enforcement, but it's a slap in the face towards the American public. The American public spoke. They want law and order. And, when I walk around and I talk to people, and in my travels, I have discussions with these individuals, everyone wants the same. They want to feel safe in their home. They want their kids to have a good future. They don't want drugs in our streets. It doesn't matter whether you're on the left side or the right side of the aisle. That's what everyone wants. I just think that, within the media, the left-leaning media, the radicals on the left, they've glamorized being lawless. They've pushed this narrative of, if you are in favor of Trump, you're a racist and what have you. But the reality is, when you just remove all that doubts from people and you tell them, do you want to feel safe in your home? Absolutely. Do you want drugs in your school? Absolutely not. Do you want a good future for your children? Yes, I do. Everyone has those same values. It's just that these radical lunatics have, invaded media, and they've made these individuals think that it's wrong to believe you should have America first.
Also, Art, it seems like if you talk about sort of how deep the deep state is or people who have these policies, they even are still existing in Department of Homeland Security. We heard from the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, recently that she found 2 leakers that were leaking about potential ICE raids. I mean, that is so dangerous. Your thoughts when you find out, she said that there were 2 of them. She was referring them to Department of Justice, but they were within her own agency, not necessarily people she hired, people that had been there for a while, obviously. But still, what is your reaction to find out somebody in Department of Homeland Security who is actually putting agents in danger?
Look, those are the enemies within. I want to say that I'm surprised, but unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I'm shocked, right, that that they found them. But I think that there's it's them too. But I assure you, there's many more in here, and that's part of the problem. That you have career managers that have built their own little kingdoms on whatever they want to do, and whoever the new person in charge is, they'll just say yes or no, sir. Right? So now we have fantastic leadership in Tom Homan and Kristi Noem, just all across the board. But you still have a lot of those individuals that have been here and built their kingdoms for a long time. And I saw it in 2016. They'll sit around and they'll say everything's okay. And then once, the coast is clear and you have somebody else running the show, they're quick to adapt and want to move with them and their moves at the same time. I think it's great that they were caught, but I think they should be charged criminally, not just administratively.
My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
How does PwC take your company to the leading edge? They bring the sharpest minds in tech to your team, so you can bring the ideas that will transform your business. They're passionate about your industry, so you can walk into any room with every advantage. And they're with you every step of the way, so you can know you're headed in the right direction. PwC builds for what's next, so you can get there now. Get started at pwc.com/us/leading edge.
This episode is brought to you by Cadillac. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Cadillac Certified Service Fresh Start Tire event. Visit Cadillac.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only. Highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
Yeah, and it looks like she's hopefully referring them for charges like that, because you're right, it has to send a message to others. How dangerous is that, to be leaking information about a raid? Because you know what that's like when you're suddenly going, ICE agents, Border Patrol agents, trying to do a raid, and they're about to get somebody, and especially if you're going after, like, say, a gang member, maybe a trained Aragua gang member, right. That could be catastrophic.
Absolutely. Look, I have seen leaks before, and it doesn't just harm the law enforcement community that's going out there after them. It harms everyone around us. It harms the community because you don't know how drastic their measures are going to be not to get apprehended. Now you're putting the public at risk. It's a complete domino effect. It's not just the agents that are going after the criminals. It's everyone in the community that gets put in danger when these acts happen.
You know, you brought up a great point, Art, because even Tom Homan, To the Borders, brought up that when these sort of tip-offs happen, or on the flip side, also say these sanctuary cities that are proactively blocking ICE from coming in, he brings up an excellent point that it's endangering others in the community, because what happens is if they're not getting the cooperation from local law enforcement, say, or the mayor's office or somebody's in different cities, they're going to have to go in with extra protection, and maybe other people are going to get rounded up, whereas they could do more of a pinpoint strategic if they actually had partners working on the ground with them.
Absolutely, and the element of surprise is gone all of a sudden. Look, they know you're coming. They're barricading themselves in those homes. They're possibly taking hostages with them. I mean, they're prepared to fight. These individuals are career criminals. They don't want to get apprehended. If you remove the element of surprise, that is a huge danger to everyone around us.
You know, they just came out, Art Del Cueto, recently that according to the new acting ICE director, Todd Lyons, this was Blockbuster, where he said that they have found tens of thousands of cases that were recorded as arrests under the Biden administration, when in fact, in these instances, he said the illegal aliens were simply processed and released, sort of the catch and released back into the community, but that the Biden administration was, I guess, you know, cooking the books to pump up ICE arrests. What's your reaction?
Again, unfortunately, I'm not surprised. I've been talking about that for a long time. I've been accused when I brought it up in different parts of the media. For many years, Rita, I've been saying it, and they said, do you have the proof? And I said, look, there's things you can prove, but there's things that you know. And you see, you know, the way the movement is. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not surprised about it, and I would not be shocked if they found out some other leaks when it comes to the got-away numbers that were expressed within the Border Patrol itself under the Biden administration. I believe there was a lot more gotaways than what they reported.
What do you think the potential number of gotaways is? And what do you think the real arrest numbers were?
Look, when you start seeing groups that come across, and it's been documented, where agents are out there chasing individuals that they can't apprehend, and they call in the group and they say 20 plus. Okay, if you don't catch that group, it went down as 20 people got away. They're not going to write 20 plus got away. They're just going to write 20 gotaways. I have been witness to those 20 plus gotaways where agents continued after the group and they ended up apprehending groups close to 60. If they would not have apprehended that group of 60, Rita, the only thing that would have been written down is 20 got away.
Wow. And you believe that's happened time and time again, obviously.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. You know, one of the other things, too, is that the numbers of arrests, even despite this, quote, cooking the books, which seems to be the case here now, which you were spot on, Art, about, even in addition to that, the numbers were still staggeringly low compared to what we've seen with the Trump administration. You know, they're saying that, you know, the arrests under Trump is about, it's like almost 33,000, they said, for nearly the first 50 days of the Trump administration. And that was, you know, pretty close to all of 2024 under Biden. I mean, you can't make it up, even with cooking the books.
But that's the thing. Those are single arrests. You know, I've worked between 2016, the first 4 years of the Trump administration, when the numbers were dropped because of rhetoric, and the arrests were solid arrests. And what I mean by that is I worked under the Obama administration as well, where they've talked about how many he, you know, deported. But what people don't understand is a lot of those were the same person. So you would catch the same person 2-3 times. You'd send them back. They'd cross again. Then you'd catch them. You'd send them back. So, yeah, there was like 3 or 4 deportations. But what they failed to tell you is it was the same person deported 4 times.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's the same sort of repeat. What about also the CBP One app? I know it's now changed to a self-deport app, but how big of an issue was that under the Biden administration in terms of sneaking the numbers in?
So they came up with so many different plans on how they could, you know, move things around and say, hey, we're trying to help with the border security. The reality is the drug cartels controlled for that entire time. And I say controlled, past tense, because I can tell you things are changing and they've been changing quick. But during the 4 years of the Biden administration, the drug cartels absolutely controlled everything that came into the country. It didn't matter what plans the Biden administration put together. The cartels were the ones that said who's crossing, where they're crossing, where they're crossing. That's who controlled the border.
And now that app, by the way, has now become a self-deport app. Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Homeland Security, I love that it's sort of reconfigured for a whole different reason. How many people do you think are really doing that? Or do you think a lot of them are still sort of hiding in the shadows and not coming out and self-deporting? What's your thoughts on how many are going to do that?
You know what? I think many are still going to hide in the shadows. That's what they're going to do. Some might even, type in there in that app saying, hey, I'm leaving, when they don't leave at all. There's just no telling at the end of the day. Look, the element of surprise is somewhat gone. So that's unfortunate. So it's become even more difficult to find where a lot of these undocumented aliens are now. But I think, you are going to have that group that's going to say, I don't want any problems. I'm done. I'm just going to go back. That aren't even going to press self-deport on that app. They're just going to leave altogether. But I think you're still going to have those that are going to be sneaky and pretend that they're going back when they're not.
There are still many Democrats, as you know. I couldn't believe this. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas came out the other day, and everybody's talking about this, Art, where she said that it's not a crime to illegally cross the border. She said it's, quote, a civil accusation.
Oh, my Lord.
Yes. What do you think when you hear that, Art?
I think we have a lot of people in leadership that don't understand the law. That's first and foremost the problem. Now, I think what they should do with those individuals that are crossing illegally into the country is they should be charged with a felony. She doesn't have it right by saying that it's not against the law. But unfortunately, where the problem is, it's not considered a felony. And that's where the issue is.
So maybe she needs to go back to law school, I think.
Some of them need to go back to law school and not only study their law again, but they need to study simple civics.
Rashida Tlaib, who's also seems to be part and parcel with Jasmine Crockett and Ilhan Omar. There was just a vote. I couldn't believe this, Art, that just took place. And she was the lone House lawmaker opposing a crackdown on Mexican cartel's border tunnel system. You would think that that's a no-brainer. The vote was 402-1. She was the one who opposed it. I have no idea what the reason was she opposed it. It was Eli Crane, Congressman of Arizona, where you are, who actually brought this up. And it was a Democrat. It was a co-sponsored bill with a Democrat from California. To me, that would be a 5-second vote. Of course, you're going to condemn them using Mexican. But for some reason, there's still one Democrat who's saying no. I mean, isn't that amazing on something as simple as that you can't even get a unified message on something as far as condemning these tunnels where all too well they're bringing in human smuggling and drugs and everything else.
And I can't believe it's taken this long. Look, as you said, I'm out here in Arizona. I grew up on the border. I was raised on the border. I was born on the border. I've lived my whole life on the border. I've been in law enforcement for close to 30 years on the border. And I remember the first tunnel that was found back in the 90s. And even then, it had hydraulic lifts, and it had a flooding system where it would flood itself with water if it was ever discovered. That was down in Douglas, Arizona, very first tunnel they found. And I just can't believe that it's taken this long for them to go after the building of these tunnels.
Yeah, it is amazing. And yet there are still people that are actually sitting members of Congress that won't condemn. I mean, isn't that I can't even imagine what the reason is that she wouldn't condemn that.
Yeah, I mean, that's ridiculous. You're okay with that. You're okay with drugs being smuggled into the country that end up in our schools and affect their children. You're okay with the human smuggling that goes on in those tunnels. You're okay with the sex trafficking that goes on in those tunnels. You're okay with the abuse of women and children that goes on while they're coming through the tunnels. That's the message she's sending to me.
Yeah, and you brought up the smuggling, the human smuggling with the kids. That has also been a big priority for the Trump administration. Sadly, they had a lot of cleanup, as you know all too well, to do after the Biden administration. How big of a task is that to locate some of these missing kids who, we all pray they're okay, but boy, I'm sure there are just many of them going through living hell.
Look, it's a very difficult task, but what they also need to do is they need to go after these NGOs. A lot of these NGOs, these nonprofit organizations that said they were going to reunite the children with family, these children were taken to from the ICE facilities to these groups. these groups were in charge of finding the parents or a relative. And when they did so, Rita, they never reached out towards law enforcement to make sure that the people that they were turning these children over to were actually members of the family. They didn't want to do that because they didn't want Border Patrol or immigration to show up and then find out that the people that were picking up these children were also in the country illegally. So they did it for that reason. They didn't want to help. We need to go after them and find out where did you and who did you take these children to? That's where they need to start.
Were they also turning a blind eye because of the money? Because they were obviously getting, paid a lot of money to help, even if their intentions were noble.
And they would turn around and look at you and say, well, they told me they were the relative. They told me they were a parent. Okay, that's fine. I want to see the books on all these nonprofit organizations that were involved with receiving these children and taking these children to people that said were their relatives. And I'm not saying all of them were not relatives. I'm not saying that. I just think that we should see those books and see who these kids were handed over to.
Yeah,
Not
and
much to ask for.
And I was going to say, there's a lot of stories too, Art, and you know it better than anybody, that there are a lot of stories of somebody who happened to bring in 20 relatives or 30 kids, and it's just almost inconceivable that they're related to that person.
I saw people that came, and remember, we were arresting individuals from 158 different countries, right? I saw at times individuals that probably looked as old as George Burns that were claiming to be 17 years old.
Wow. And what do you do in a case like that?
Nothing. They come across with no documentation. They come across with no ID. You fingerprint these individuals, and no record comes out, Rita, because they've never been arrested in the U.S. So it's basically a blank record. People were coming across and they'd say, I'm 16 years old. I'm 17 years old. And you'd look at them and you'd say, there's no way you're 17 years old.
Jif peanut butter. It's that jiffing good, it doesn't really need advertising. So instead, enjoy the calming sounds of the ocean. Jif. Ooh, it's that jiffing good. Get your Jif at Jif.com.
This episode is brought to you by Hulu, presenting Paradise. Paradise is Hulu's critically acclaimed addictive drama series, starring Sterling K. Brown, Julianne Nicholson, and James Marsden. The Daily Beast calls Paradise your next TV obsession, and the New York Times says it's exhilarating in all the right ways. Paradise is for your Emmy consideration in all categories, including Outstanding Drama Series. For more information, visit fyc.hulu.com.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
Wow. Before I let you go, obviously the new designation of making these cartels foreign terrorist organizations. How helpful is that? It gives you guys a lot more tools.
It does, and that's where it comes down. It gives the agents and just law enforcement in general a lot more tools so they can secure the border. For the longest time, you'd have to wait forever for another organization to show up and help you. Or other agency. This is huge, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a huge hit when it comes to the drones that fly into the U.S. So the cartels have been flying drones in the U.S. for a long time to gather intel, and you can't take them down because of an old law that says, the rules of, an aircraft flying into the United States. Somebody needs to make a bill that, carves out drones. By all means, I don't want people out there shooting airplanes or anything that are coming across the border, but I believe that there's got to be some kind of law out there to take out drones that are flying into the United States just to get intel for the cartels.
Yeah, just like you said, because they're working for them. They're an attachment of it. So you're right. And we got to be up on technology that the drone, cartels are using all too well. So very important stuff. Well, everybody be sure to subscribe and share to this podcast. Art Del Cueto, this was very eye-opening. And you do such a great job, you and everybody there with the National Border Patrol Council. It's great to have you here, Art.
Thank you, Rita. It's always a huge pleasure because you're one of those individuals that has continued to fight and has been fighting for our future for a long time. And I want to thank you on behalf of the National Border Patrol Council and on behalf of my heroes in green that are out there putting their lives on the line each and every day.
Well, thank you. You guys are our heroes. And thank you for all you do to keep us safe. And your 30 years of great service. Thank you, Art.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Rita.
And everybody, I'll be back soon with another great edition of Protecting America. And of course, you can catch me every weeknight, 10 p.m. to midnight on the legendary WABC Radio. This is Rita Cosby, and thanks for all you do to protect America.